These guys are good at counting backwards. Don McKinnon here. This show is Good Old Days. Pat will be back with us the next show today. Our guest is Kevin Moreira, who is jack of all trade and master of them all. So, but I want to start off, well, first of all, Kevin, the reason that we do this show is historical. And we do this, these DVDs are all in record now. We've been doing them since 2011. And these are available if anybody ever has the courage to write the history of the town of Raynham. We've already, some of them are. There are histories of the town of Raynham. But these tapes will all be available for them because years ago we had some wonderful people, and there's no record of them, though.
Correct.
So we do now, including you.
Well, Don, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on. When you asked me, I was ecstatic.
Thank you. To have you
Thank
on.
you.
And you're, as I say, when I say master of all, because there are several boards, and one of them you've been on for quite a period of time, which we'll get back to, which is conservation.
Correct.
But however, the one I'd like to talk to you about is the one that I'm not familiar with, so therefore I'm assuming most of the people out there are not. I'm going to call it emergency management. Is it Raynham Emergency Management?
Correct.
The title.
Well, it's the CERT team. CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team. It is a FEMA-initiated program. A lot of towns.
What's FEMA now?
FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency at the federal level.
Is this a federal position? In other words, I know it's volunteer, but
it is not. It is not a federal position. It's a federal-sponsored program. It is another tool for the local emergency management offices to use in all types of emergencies if they need additional bodies to help. It's all the people on the CERT team are all there. They all chose to go through the training. They're all volunteers.
How many are there, Kevin?
Currently in Raynham, we just graduated one more last Thursday, so we're up to 13 in Raynham, 13 volunteers that are fully trained.
How do you recruit those people?
Very, very difficultly. So CERT is definitely not something that has been in the forefront. A lot of towns don't have it yet. A lot of towns have, some towns have large CERT teams, some towns don't have many. We just stood ours up about a year and a half ago.
Well, see, I never heard of it, so therefore it's never been here before.
Correct. Towns like Bridgewater, Whitman, they have larger CERT teams, probably about 2 dozen.
Taunton have a CERT team?
Taunton has a CERT team also, and Taunton you might hear a lot more about their CERT team because they have a full-time office of the emergency management. So they're a full-time office. Here in the smaller towns like Raynham, Bridgewater, East and West Bridgewater, the emergency management office is pretty much a one-man show, and that's usually the fire chief. So Chief Janis has his hands full.
Chief, yeah, it was Janis, his dad before him, and,
correct.
And George Andrews and Ray Chappell. They've all had that. So is that the title? What's the title, Kevin?
So Chief Janis wears two hats. He wears the fire chief hat, and he also wears the hat of Director of Emergency Management here for the town of Raynham.
Is that the title?
That's his official title, but most of us go by Chief.
Yeah, I would say that's a good one.
Right, and we are another. The CERT team works for Chief Janis. And we are another tool in his toolbox if an emergency arises where he needs assistance with opening a shelter during say a snowstorm, and we have a loss of power for over 3 days in a section of town. Well, the CERT team through Chief Janis, he may ask us to help him with a place to stay warm, a place to charge your cell phones,
maybe the school.
The schools. Right now, we currently have an agreement with the BR school system where we would share a shelter with Bridgewater at one of the schools in Bridgewater. And we would divert some of our CERT team to assist the Bridgewater team in helping run that shelter over in Bridgewater.
Is it now one of those things that I'll give you a name now and see if it means anything to you. Rick Ferreira, Taunton.
Rick Ferreira, if I'm not mistaken, is the Director of Emergency Management over in Taunton.
Is that the same thing?
So it is, because it's...
is that what Rick does?
Rick does emergency management. In Taunton, it's a larger establishment. It's a larger city like Brockton.
Does he have paid employees?
I think he does have paid employees. He's a paid employee, and he has employees below him also.
Is that what he does, though, or are there other things?
I think that is what he does full-time, because it's such a larger community. It's a larger... they have a lot more people in the town of Taunton, in the city of Taunton. Same thing with Brockton. Brockton is under the same, in the same boat. They also have a full-time emergency management office
Right.
with full-time staff.
Now, I'll give you another name. You know these names, though. I know you do, because you're in the business. Herb Lemon.
Herb Lemon used to be the emergency management director in Bridgewater, and also
People don't think I know Bridgewater. I got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
People don't think I have friends. I got a lot of friends in Bridgewater, and Herb Lemon is one of them.
yeah, Herb Lemon
He's
is
a good guy.
he's a retired employee of the federal government. He was a selectman also, and
That's how I know him.
and he used to be the emergency management director in Bridgewater before it went back over to the fire chief in Bridgewater, which is Chief Rogers.
Okay. Now, Chief Rogers, who, by the way, you're originally Bridgewater.
Correct.
Rogers is originally Raynham. So now we have a lot of trades involved.
Right, right.
A player to be announced later.
Right.
We have the, but anyway, now in Bridgewater, do they have paid employees? Because Herb was paid. Do they have paid employees?
They do not. With the downsizing of emergency management all around the country.
Oh, it downsized.
It goes up and down in spurts depending on what's going on. After 9/11, there was a big push for additional help and resources. After Hurricane Katrina, there was another big push for additional help and resources. So it's gone up and down over time, and I think certain communities that position is paid by the local community.
Right.
So depending on what the community's finances are at the time, they may have to downsize or upsize. And I think that's what happened in Bridgewater. They downsized a little bit, and they moved that title of the emergency management director back to the fire chief.
When it goes back to the fire chief, does he basically use his own firefighters, or does he also do, say, what you do or what Rick Ferreira does? Goes to the public.
It's a lot going back to the public. The fire department, firefighters are there for say an incident occurs initially. There's a house fire. The fire department goes, puts out the fire, but then you may need the CERT team to come in and help with maybe establishing an area, a warming tent for the family, because the family is now displaced
You guys
before.
have tents?
We actually just received a grant through MEMA, through the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and we just received a lot of brand new supplies, a brand new tent, which we'll be able to use in incidences like that.
Yeah. Boy, that's surprising. And I would say, do you realize that most people don't know?
Don, I do realize that. We were at the Raynham Pride Day,
Yeah.
and we actually had done the legwork. We got a tent, a CERT tent from Bridgewater. If you saw us at the Raynham Pride Day, that was a borrowed tent. It was a loaner tent. It was a loaner tent from the town of Bridgewater. But we got the tent up. We got some supplies. We have our own supplies, and it was a good community environment for us to.
Where do you meet, Kevin?
So right now, and I'm glad you asked that. So because a lot of these communities don't have large teams, so what's ended up happening is Raynham, Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, Halifax, Hanson, and Whitman, 7 communities have all consolidated to a regional team for mutual aid to each other, and that is called the.
So you're in communication with those other, let's say, 5 or 6 communities.
Correct. So between those communities, we've established a larger regional asset. So we can provide mutual aid to each other in times of emergency, kind of like the fire department would do going over to help with a fire in a different town. So we have that capability now to assist going over to a different town, over to
Now,
Bridgewater.
if you have something and it goes through the day, are most of your most of your volunteers, are they able to do that? Because based in the old days, we all used to have call fire.
Correct.
And the call fire were there because all of the call fire people worked locally. They worked making nails, or they were, they were in farms and auto dealerships, and then when the bell rang, off they went, and they were allowed to leave their jobs.
Right. And
Now, can these people?
that we do not have.
Yeah.
So these are not they're call volunteers to a point. They have civilian jobs. They work a regular 9 to 5 somewhere. So that's another reason why the regionalization of all the communities into a bigger pool.
Well, that's what created the full-time
Right.
rather than the volunteer, because what happened was people got jobs out of their town.
Correct. So we
And
may
that's
have.
what yours do.
So you may have a larger incident where our team only consists. We just. We have about a dozen. And out of those dozen, you have to always assume that only 25% of your capabilities are available at any time.
That's what I thought.
So that helps us with sharing our assets with the other communities in this larger regional concept, where we could have an incident here in Raynham. We could request assistance from the other CERT teams in the other communities, and then if it was a longer incident, say a snowstorm. Last year, we got lucky. We had a lot of snow, but we really didn't lose power, so it was great. So the need for a shelter.
Thanks to the TMLP.
TMLP did a great job. They did a great job.
The greatest things that Taunton did was, one, the Morton Hospital, but still, the Morton Hospital, and the other was the TMLP.
Yeah, and they did a great job keeping us out of the dark last year. But the CERT teams were prepared to open up a shelter in Bridgewater. They actually did open up the shelter for that first big snowstorm, and the communities did so well on keeping the power on that not one single person came to the shelter. So in a way that was great.
Yeah.
The resource was
Bridgewater has a different power system, though. When I say TMLP, I mean Raynham.
Correct.
But these other communities, they don't have TMLP.
No, they don't.
They really don't.
They don't.
Is Berkeley included in that?
They're not. They're not. We are actually the only community in
TMLP.
in Bristol County that fall under this regionalized system. All the other communities.
Taunton isn't considered part of this region.
No, because they have their own larger emergency management
I see,
setup.
because they're a city.
Correct.
With numbers and things.
Correct.
So Whitman, Hanson, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, Bridgewater, they come under a different power company.
Correct.
And evidently during the snowstorm, they didn't lose it either.
No, all the utilities did a great job last winter. But if the need were to arise, we could go and help and man the shelter, and dividing up the shifts, because obviously
you like the Red Cross in a sense.
So
coffee
actually
and donuts.
Yeah, so actually the Red Cross actually helped out. They came out in September and gave us training on how to run a shelter in Bridgewater. So actually, it's the shelter program is actually almost a program that we've kind of cut and paste from the Red Cross. But it's the same thing.
Okay.
This contract's in place through the school system. So if
what got this started, Kevin? You got it started. You got the idea. Yeah, I know you didn't start. You didn't reinvent the typewriter. I mean, people have been doing it. But what got you into this? So
what got me into it, Don, was a couple years ago I switched jobs in the military. I went from driving a truck in the military and being an administrator to going over to work as a liaison from the DOD to FEMA. So when there was a larger emergency at the state level, they could.
So it kind of lent itself to this.
It kind of led itself to that. I went to a lot of classes for emergency management in FEMA, and it kind of opened my eyes into this whole emergency management, and trying to be prepared. This whole arena of trying to get ready and be prepared, and that kind of pushed me over to talk to Chief Janis about a CERT team that we didn't have in Raynham. And
did he assist?
He was great. Chief Janis has been a wonderful help. He's been more than helpful on anything that we need.
That's good to hear.
Oh, it's been great. We needed to get going. We needed a class started. We needed some radios. We needed a couple other things, and he was right on it. He's been such a great resource, trying to get us ready. Hopefully, the big part is getting us ready. Hopefully for nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's an asset that you have that you hope you don't have to use.
Yeah. But still.
Still, if the incident were.
And what if this numbers of people working with you did that? Has it been in effect a year and a half now?
It's been a year and a half. Yeah.
And then over that, you started off. You had 2 or 3, and then you got 5.
Yeah, we started off with 5, then we went up to 10. Now we're up to 12. So it's been slowly escalating, and we have a couple other people in the pipeline that once another class starts up, we can get them into the class.
Is somebody waiting in the wings to join?
Yeah, we have about 2 members. We have about 2 people from Raynham Pride Day that are interested in joining in the next class. And that usually starts up in January.
Did you have a place there? I'm sorry, I must have missed it. Did you have a place there?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
And that's
where we did some of our recruitment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That works out well. I don't remember it.
Yeah, everybody on the CERT team actually goes through a FEMA-endorsed training class. It's 26 hours.
It's nice that people are interested to do that.
Correct.
That's very
Correct.
nice.
Yeah, everybody that goes through the CERT team training class gets trained in.
Is there a uniform?
We actually have a shirt that we wear. It's on the back. It says CERT. We have, once you graduate the basic training class, you get some more equipment. You get a backpack.
Are these basically military people or just
No, just anybody.
Joe Citizen?
Anybody.
I don't mean that
Yeah,
negative,
no.
Joe Citizen.
And actually,
don't get mad at me.
that's actually what we're looking for, Don.
Yeah.
We have one person who works in as a nurse for the VA. So we have a nurse on our team. We have a mental health specialist on our team. We have truck drivers on our team. We have some retirees on our team. So we have a wider assortment of people that are on our team.
No, I only meant that because most of you, many of your policemen, for example, are former military, which you're military.
Correct. Correct. And currently on the team, I think I'm the only one that's prior military. So it's great. It's great to actually
They may activate you in the leader. Have you got
So-
a deputy in case they activate you?
So it's great to see the community come out, without even any prior experience,
Yeah.
and go through this, and jump into this training class. Everybody that goes through the training class goes through CPR, AED.
Boy, that's wonderful.
Choking. They
Who
all
pays
get,
for that? The
they,
government
They all
pays
get.
for
They
that?
all get.
Grants pay for that?
Grants pay for all that. They all get certified. They go through.
Do you have to apply for those regular grants, Kevin? Is that what you
Yeah,
have to do?
that's actually run through the fire department. Chief Janice,
Oh, okay.
takes care of all that for us
Yeah.
and getting supplies and equipment.
I
But
always knew he was a nice guy.
oh, he's a great guy.
I
He's
heard
a great
he was
guy.
a nice guy before. No, that's great to hear. He's a friend of mine from way back.
Oh, he's a great.
I taught him
great guy.
CCD, I think, Jimmy. I believe I did. One of those. So that goes back to in high school or something like that. But he is the whole fire department and police department. We have a great deal.
Absolutely.
And I also see that you're listed, and I do this by checking the town report. You're also a constable. Now, are you a constable by virtue of this? Does being a constable help you in this at all? Because I think it might be tied more to the animal officer aspect.
It is. It's tied more to the animal side of the house between
Right.
the assistant animal control officer and the animal inspector.
Right.
And that's where the constable comes in.
Okay. And now here's a question I've always, I'm never sure. I only did this for 4 decades, so I'm not sure what I did. But being a constable, of course, Al Porter, when I first was selectman, I was standing on the other side on Route 138 and something was going on. I said, I'm going to go over there. And Al says, you can't go over there. You're not a constable. And so we always kind of thought we were, but we never were. What does that allow you to do, do you believe, as a constable?
So for me specifically, I use the constable appointment for specific things, and they're mostly for the animal control and the animal inspector side.
And
of the
that,
house.
let me just explain to the world then that Kevin also is the animal officer, and I'm not sure of the title because I got you down twice, animal inspector and animal control. In the old days, we used to call you the dog officer, but you weren't there at that time. So you've got two facets, because one of them used to be I would call them the dog officer. People then know what I'm talking about, and I will know what I'm talking about. But then there also was the inspector who used to go in barns and things of that nature. That's a separate position.
Correct. Those are two separate
And that's
positions.
what you are, though. You're both of those.
I am both. So I'm actually the assistant animal control officer in town. Adam Perry is our primary animal control officer. Has done a great job with the program. Outstanding.
See, I don't know him at all. Is he from Raynham?
He is from Raynham.
Yep.
He's done a great job with the animal control program, and it's a pleasure to work with him.
I used to always say about animal control, if you do your job correctly in the first place, it'll be not too bad in the second, because it's not the easiest job in the world.
It's definitely
But if you
not.
don't do it, I'll play on words, he'll come back and bite you. He'll come back and get you.
Yeah, and then the other position, the animal inspector, is actually a completely separate position.
Is that the barns and things that I'm
Correct.
thinking about?
That's the stable inspections and dealing with animals that are with rabies.
If
and
an animal bites, then they have to be housed for
they got to be
X number.
quarantined for X amount of
That
days.
comes under that position.
Correct.
People,
That-
you don't have to worry about that. This is not a test, but nonetheless, Kevin's got to understand the difference.
Correct.
In a way, Because actually, you just do it.
Correct. And the animal inspector position actually is the
For
municipal.
that, you're a constable.
Correct. Well, the constable works for both,
Yeah.
for the primary, the alternate animal inspector, alternate animal control officer and the animal inspector. But the animal inspector position it's appointed at the town level, but it's actually a state-run program through the Department of Agriculture, the Animal Health Division.
Do you have training there, Kevin?
Correct.
Go?
This conferences and seminars that we're able to go to.
Right.
But that's actually the stable inspections and the quarantines of animals that have bitten or been bitten. That's all reportable through the state. So that all gets reported up through the state.
And so you have to go to meetings where there's groups of people that do what you do. Is that the inspection angle, or
Correct.
is that the animal
Well,
office?
it's actually both.
Okay, all right.
I've actually been to both.
And Mr. Perry goes to that?
Correct,
Is that
correct.
Perry? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, Adam Perry.
Okay.
And we've been to the classes, which is great because we actually get to meet other animal control officers and network and
Yeah.
see what's going on.
regionalizes it, yeah.
So we can see what everybody else is doing too.
It's one of those things that you look at it and you realize that there was a time when animals just used to run wild. Well, when I moved here in 1962, you let the dog out in the morning, and sometimes you didn't see it for a day or two.
Correct.
And my dog, we used to call him the father of the neighborhood, and he used to wander around, and people used to come and yell at me in the house, say, "Hey, I don't know where." So that one, and all of a sudden we used the word leash law, and all of a sudden that changed the whole thing.
Correct.
But we don't have. I used to say we don't have a leash law, though, do we? We have a animal control. Is there another word? Am I using the wrong word?
So Raynham does have a leash law.
Okay.
So all
It's termed that.
Correct. It does have a leash law. So it's actually in the animal control. It's in the bylaw for the animal control.
Okay. But when they say leash, it used to be. I remember Walter O'Brien was, and I'm sorry we don't have more on Walter, but he was a selectman and a representative, and he wrote a law on red caps and all this. He was a hunter.
Right.
And he believed that animals like dogs, hunting dogs, as long as that's what Walter believes, as long as they're controlled, then that's okay. But in Raynham, if a person's walking a dog and they have the dog under control but without a leash, is that illegal?
It is. It is. If it's off your...
And that's the change in times.
Correct. Yeah, correct. That is the change.
Walter would vote no.
Yeah. And there are some animals that are well controlled, well tamed, but once they leave, the confined area of your yard that's fenced in, now it becomes an issue. So
it's okay if they're in the yard wandering around.
Well, if your yard is fenced in, if it's in your front yard and your animal runs out into the street and bites somebody, well then you broke the leash law.
and that hurts. I read about that in magazine.
That would hurt.
That hurts, yeah. Do you have trouble with dogs that really are difficult to control, Kevin?
From what I found, most animals are just happy to see you and hop in the truck and go for a ride.
Who we have? George was his last name. Do you remember him? You don't know him. I'll have to look up in my book to find his name. He was the animal officer 20 years ago or something like that, And he used to put them in the back of his car, and he used to fall in love with them. So he'd keep them. They'd become his pets.
I actually had a small dog probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and opened up the back of the car, told him to get in, put the brakes on, wouldn't get in. I opened up the passenger front seat, jumped right in.
Yeah,
wanted to go for a ride.
Because he was used to that, probably.
Wanted to go for a ride.
Yeah.
So in that instance, I said, "Okay, you win."
Do people now register correctly their dog? Because I can remember the days they didn't.
Yeah, unfortunately, those days are still here. If I had to guess, maybe 50 to 75% of the animals in Raynham are registered. The rest are not, which makes
25 to 50%.
Yeah, which makes it hard from the animal control point of view, because our goal is to get the pet back to its family right away. And if the dog is not registered and we find it, we have to take it to the shelter. And if we have to take it to
the shelter used to be in Raynham, isn't it?
Correct. Currently, the town of Raynham has a contract with the shelter in Lakeville. So
Now, how many miles is that from here?
it's probably a good 15 miles, you know, but through the back roads, you know,
Wow.
depending, you know,
Wow.
10 to 15 miles, depending on which side of town. If you're coming from the north side of Raynham, you know, it gets to be a hike, you know.
Yeah.
So usually, if the animals are found and they have licenses and tags on them,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier,
Yeah.
and the animal can go straight home.
Right.
But when they don't, you know, we don't have a facility in town
So
to
you have
house
to-
them, so we have to take them to the shelter,
Right.
and the owner will end up calling to find out if we have their dog. And most of the time we say, yes, we found it 3 hours ago.
Yes,
We didn't get any calls. It's not licensed. It's at the shelter in Lakeville. And once it goes to the shelter in Lakeville, now you're dealing with them to release it, you know,
Yeah.
and it's on their schedule, their time. We have no control over that in
People
Raynham.
get upset with you.
And they do. Oh, absolutely. They get up to, why can't I get my animal back? And it's,
Yeah, I know.
you know, once it turns into their, once it's dropped off, we have no control, you know, on its release. And
We had one years ago that, I don't know, I got it going up the street. It followed me wherever I went, so I dropped it off in the town hall selectman's office with Barbara Sleazer, who was the secretary at the time. And the woman who finally came around got all upset with us. Well, she had been divorced, and she changed her name. So the name wasn't the same on the tag as her name was. I said, gee, would you settle down? And never mind the dog settling down. Would you settle down so that we can get your dog back to you, you know? And even then, she wrote me a letter signed by the dog's name. She wanted a street light out in front of her house, and come to find out it wasn't her that wanted it. It was the dog who wanted it. And the dog said, I would like a street light out in front, you know. We wrote it back and said, you know, we'll give, dear, whatever the dog's name was, we'll give that consideration. So there are some funny stories coming
was it over the
around.
fire hydrant?
No,
It might have been over.
no. Wanted a light out in front of her house. So, because, of course, I won't say what street, but then I'll give a clue as to who it was, because it's nobody's business but ours anyway. But there are stories like that once in a while they get a little bit of levity to
Right.
them. So, and when you do this now, you are the assistant. So what
Correct.
happens if the dog, the animal, what do we call it? Animal control
Animal
officer?
control officer.
Animal control, when he goes on vacation, then you have to
Correct.
do it full time.
Correct.
But otherwise, you kind of assist him.
Assist him when needed.
If a dog, is there such a thing, and there is in life, a vicious dog? Do you have some method of, or does
So,
the police have to come? on
We
board?
do have some ways to to restrain. We have the longer poles that we can keep the dogs at a distance so we don't get
Have
bitten
you used
ourselves.
those?
No, we've actually been pretty. We've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we may find a rabid animal that we'll have to use it on because we don't want the animal, you know, a wild animal.
Yeah.
Usually for the most part, animal control deals with the domestic animals. We're a domestic
Yeah.
animal.
Yeah.
But sometimes we do get those emergency calls where we have to, all of a sudden there's a rabid animal in somebody's yard, in their backyard, and it's confrontational with their family pet, and
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Sometimes we do have to get the police department involved.
Have you had to order the termination of life of those animals?
I'm not. I haven't to myself.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing about a year and a half now.
Okay,
Yeah.
and everybody's still alive and well.
Yeah, everybody's still going.
That's
Yeah.
nice. We've had some dogs that, big dogs kind of eat little dogs, and sometimes, but that's a serious situation when a
Correct.
dog attacks another dog.
Absolutely. Comes into checking vaccination records and making sure
You have
everybody's
the shots now, don't you?
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
and that's
And that's another good thing about having the dogs licensed. When they go to the town hall to get their dog license, they have to show proof of vaccinations.
Yeah, and that's-
So that's always a plus. So when you get a licensed dog that's around the street roaming around and they have current tags, well, that dog's been vaccinated.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit easier
Yeah.
on the animal control officer.
So things, does the regular dog officer patrol at all? Yeah.
On occasion, if he's been away on vacation, and I'm covering, and it's slow. So I'll hop in the cruiser and we'll go for a ride around town just to show people that here
Yeah.
we are. We're
Visibility,
here. That's
yeah.
absolutely. I've had some weekends where I'm covering and it's just it's slow. There's nothing going on.
Yeah.
So I'll hop in the car and I'll go for a ride around
Just take a
town.
ride
You just take a ride around
Yeah.
town, and sometimes you'll stop
Oh, it's
and
nice they see. I think we're running into it. This is the time, Kevin, when you see, I told you how far, and we didn't even get into the new placards for the identification.
For conservation, we didn't even get into
We
any
didn't get the
conservation.
We'll have to have you back at another time. Then.
no,
See,
it's-
this was a mini interview.
A mini interview.
So, thank you very much for coming in, Kevin. We appreciate it.
Don, I appreciate it again.
And,
Thank you for having me.
When Pat gets back, we'll have you in sometime, and we'll talk about conservation and about those plaques. What?
Oh, those signs around
Signs
town.
around
All the brand new signage around
Yeah.
town, all the conservation property.
And people will notice that that is a conservation effort, or is
Conservation effort. Yeah, that was a
Right,
conservation effort.
right. Dot Newton put them up originally, but Welcome to Raynham. So-
Correct, yeah.
And now there's other signs that are being put up that identify things. And, you
Correct.
know, so, thanks again, Kevin.
Again, Don,
Appreciate you coming in.
thank you for having me, Don.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
All right.